Overrated episode 13, leaks for days. Like, we're now in that business, you know? We couldn't make it by talking about interesting stuff, so now we gotta lower it down a little bit, right? That's how esports works apparently nowadays. We are going to talk about Contenders, and obviously there have been huge changes recently in, rosters, how the league will play out, and we just wanted to talk about these developments recently. And I guess the first thing that we should be talking about is what the league will be like, and what the changes are, or what the same things will be happening from season 0 to season 1. So what do you think is like the most glaring difference between season 1 and season 0?
The most glaring difference, or like what's the whole new thing, basically? Because first of all, season 0 had that massive open qualifier in the first few days, where like every team could participate, no matter what they rank, no matter what they SR or whatever. It was just like throw 6 guys into a team and go and participate. And because of that, for these 2 qualifiers, the European and the North American one, it was around, I think, 12 hours of gameplay, like not continuous gameplay, but it was like they started playing at noon or something, and they ended like midnight, because there was so many matches to be played, and the players from the most prominent teams that were participating and already have made it to season 1 also had they were exhausted at some point. Like it's too much of a waiting time, and at the same time you don't know when it's going to go up and when it's going to go to when you're going to play and for how long, and then like how much downtime it's taken. Like you can't schedule anything, you can't leave your spot, and you have to constantly wait to see what happens. So the qualifier is out of the way, and after that it's like now it's 8 teams. Okay, so we're almost like in the playoffs phase. Like I don't know how they're going to do it, but again, like in the season 0 we had like 16 teams, and then we made it down to 8 teams. Right now it's 8 teams. It's probably the 8 best teams from each side, basically. So yeah, I'm not sure like how they're going to organize it. They said something about 6 weeks of playtime. So I imagine that they're going to be like a group phase for these 8 teams. Maybe something what the Overwatch Winter Premiere did. Like,
It's also strange. Like in the infographic, they say that it's also going to have offline finals. So you're playing 6 weeks to reduce the amount of teams
to 4.
To 4 that then go to a offline final? And is an offline final for 4 teams really worth it? Are you going to play every series best of 7 or something? It's strange to fill. Like, there aren't very many offline esports event with merely 4 teams, right? Isn't that a little bit strange?
I mean, it was like the same case for the Overwatch Winter Premiere. That's why I brought it as an example. It was like, again, 8 teams battling it out over 6 weeks again. I think it was like there were 3 group stages, like 3 group stage days where everyone was battling against everyone else, and then accumulating points, and every group stage day some team was left out and something like that. They reached all the way down to 4, and then they went on in that LAN event. I don't remember exactly the place, and they played the 4 teams 2 semifinals and the grand finals, where Immortals made their debut as a top contender team.
True.
And another interesting thing, again, in the next event that Immortals participated in one, I think it was a Carbon series, if I'm not mistaken. Again, it was like either 6 or 8 teams. I think it was 8 teams, where again they played like this extended group stage, and then they went on to the playoffs. So it could be like that. It could definitely play out like the Overwatch Winter Premiere thing.
Yeah.
Just extended group stage.
I think in a sense I like because it will likely result in higher level play, right? It's not like a glorified, go for Overwatch where you have to play 16 hours 2 days in a row and hope that your strategies hold up. You can actually sort of prepare for teams, right? And if it's over 6 weeks, I assume that I don't see them splitting up. So, for instance, finishing season 1 and then finishing season 2, right? And the thing we also have to keep in mind is that at least I very much hope that they will bring, somehow the North American, the European bracket together, and they will sort of play against each other in the finals, right?
Like the Overwatch Open, which had like these two separate. Oh yeah, it could be like that's definitely something that should happen.
I hope they aren't going to separate the brackets and only let the teams meet in the finals. That was sort of awkward. So for those that don't remember, the Overwatch Open were like, you had a European bracket and you had an American bracket, and they would play each other in separately, and then only the winner of the European bracket would play the winner of the American bracket in the final. And that really, it is not really about continents then as much as it is about teams, right? You can't really infer anything about strength, which I think a lot of people like in esports, right?
Yeah, but again, it's like each side of the Atlantic is going to play their own playoffs. Like
that's obviously, yeah.
And again, I think it would be like the offline finals for the European side, they will be played on European soil, and the offline finals for the North American will be played on North American soil. So after that, either you get the top 4 from each side and you bring them together in a separate arena and they play again a playoffs bracket, being seeded, and whatever, and then you get like the top teams from the 8 teams, or you just have like a showdown between the champion of one side and the champion from the other side. And speaking of champions, it's the return of the champions basically for the North American side. Like EnVyUs finally are going to participate in a North America event with an offline bracket, because the other event, I think, because the Overwatch Rumble, they participated. It was like online event only. At least in this case, we will get to see them playing offline again against the
and then
teams.
We're finally going to see them play against Rogue too, right? Likely, if the bracket plays out right. I guess there are certain situations where they never have to play each other, even though it's very unlikely, obviously, right? So yeah, it's actually that's one thing to look forward to, because I think the Overwatch Rumble was also the only best of 5, if I remember correctly, where we saw them meet up, right? I think didn't they meet each other twice in that in Overwatch Rumble?
Yeah, they met twice, if I remember correctly myself, because Rogue sent them to the lower bracket, and then they made it all the way again to face them in the grand final. So they meet twice.
And it was fairly close, if I remember correctly. At least the final was 3-2, if I'm not mistaken, and it was pretty close.
I think it was it's a 3-1. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, that could be.
Let's look it up like really fast.
Yeah, I mean there are close 3-1 series. Yes, like the score isn't necessarily indicative of the actual how close people played each other. I mean, if we think about Rogue, they had close 3-0 against was it Kongju Panthera, right? They played Kongju in the group stage, and they had a 3-0, even though that Rogue could have just as easily won that best of 5, right? So
yep, it could have gone their way.
Yeah,
but
so what's the score?
3-2, as you remember.
3-2. Okay.
3-2. They lost in the winners finals 2-0. EnVyUs was 0, and then they won against Selfless Gaming 2-1, and they went there 3-2.
Huh.
So, but another interesting thing is that, like in that tournament, it was like again you had the map draft, because the matches were best of 3, and you had like this kind of condition where for best of 3 you need 5% map drafts. This time around, it won't be like that. you know, like the game modes will be prearranged. It will not be like the previous season of Contenders, and maybe we could see upsets in the group stage. Like if it works like this the same exactly as the season 0, where you get points, you get like a win based on the game modes you win, you get tries, you get draws, you get like all these things. Maybe you could even see upsets there, depending on who's in your group. Like
Yeah.
not the your group, because it's like 8 teams now, so there won't be a group stage like we know it. It's going to be like either all teams play all teams for 3 weeks, and then we go down to 4 by eliminating each week someone, or I don't know, like yeah. I mean,
There's a lot you can do in 6 weeks, right? Like they basically could come up with any sort of tournament system, and it would probably all fit in 6 weeks, depending on how much they actually want to broadcast. But my feeling is, if you look at the time frame, right, it ends in October, so the time frame is curious for 2 things. Obviously, the one thing is that I would likely think that the production crew for the OWL will also be part of the production there, or at least, you know, like observers or something. They will still continue testing these things. And also, another thing that's quite curious is obviously that the tournament likely finishes before the roster.
Oh, the deadline.
The deadline finishes.
I
right?
think it will finish way earlier, maybe even before the 15th of October, because again, it's like the World Cup is also closed, like either on the beginning of November or at the end of October.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, you need like the players playing in the World Cup also play in these teams, so you need like to make some kind of downtime. Like you can't really drop them against other teams that weren't really practicing at all, not like competing at all, because they weren't in Contenders or whatever, or things like that. So it's really stuck. Like that period in October will be really stuck. At the same time, I think it's also the finals for Apex. Like Apex starts now and it will probably also end around October, I think. So it's gonna be a bit stacked in events then.
I mean, that's nice. That's sort of what we wanted, right? That we finally get to see some consistent Overwatch, even though it's sort of global in a sense that we're getting it from all the regions. And I'm especially happy for Europe in a sense, because like Contenders is like 50% of all the tournament games played in Europe, right? So
there was just today a league going on with finals or whatever, but yeah, like right now Europe is so dry from tournaments. It's probably going to be the first season of Overwatch League. I will be very much surprised if it is in the first season of Overwatch League. I mean, surely the American investors, the sponsors or whatever, have a different relationship with with the gaming industry, because it has flourished in America a lot, right? All the companies are there, all the big names are there. They have other relationships, working in the same circles, like the top, the people at the top, and all this stuff. But the people in Europe, the investors from Europe, so from European side, they're not in that circle as close, as the American investor, and therefore they will need something even more concrete, even more reassurance that their investment is going to pay off than the Americans. Yeah. And therefore I will be very much surprised if we see a team like off the bat in the Overwatch League, but it could happen. Like maybe France, because they have like the rock team, so you can like pull them out of America again and have them competing for the France side of things in Paris.
I don't know how much, at this point I'm not even sure how much it matters if the country has good players in terms of if you can secure investors or not, right? That's probably a minor factor. If you tell a French guy that also just so happens that in the Western scene they are the most, well-known team as well as the most successful recently, I guess that's a small selling point, because it should be easier to market them to your regional audience than, you know, people from another continent, possibly, right?
True.
So,
And you know what I noticed? Like all the players, I think right now, like Kungarna played in the Winter Premiere, right? The Renegade guys, I don't remember if they played on LAN somewhere, but the FNRG FE guys also played on LAN. They also have LAN experience. The FaZe guys have LAN experience. Like it's like, you know, when you reach the LAN phase, at least for the North America side of things, because Europe has many new names that you know appeared recently. These players have also LAN experience, so you know that they will perform. Like it's not going to be like, you know, a tilt or a massive, you know, overwhelming experience for them, and therefore
definitely.
it's even nicer in this regard. That you know, you have the names, you've seen them time and time again. Like you can invest, you can predict, you can talk about them, you can create player profiles or whatever. It's not the same as Europe, where like Singularity, it's their first appearance if they reach deep into the playoffs. 1, 2, 3, another name that also had a roster change lately. We don't know which is the replacement yet, but Kodak was dropped from the team on July 26th. So there are many things juicy to talk about. Like, you know.
I mean, we've been sort of lying when we're saying that there's going to be 8 teams in North America and 8 teams in Europe. Currently, both teams, both leagues or both sides only have 7 teams, realistically, because we know that from the ESPN article, we know that the Team Liquid organization is going to, for now, drop out of Overwatch, right? We know that, you know, Movistar Riders is kaput, basically, and it really begs the question, like, how are we going to resolve these matters, right? And then there was a certain controversy, right, between 2 parties, and, you know, they didn't really like. What are you doing? I wasn't even looking.
Let's open the pawn shop. Let's open the pawn shop. Like, it's time. Let's do it. Like, I mean,
okay. So
you sell me the deal. I will make it down for you. How much it costs? Like, you're Liquid. Let's go.
Okay. You know, I got a spot in a league that 5,000 people watched online. What can you give me for that?
You say that you have like 15. You have like 6 players that there were 3 Quake legends, and they have played in the game since the beginning, and you have like top 4 finishes in 3 competitions or something like that. What about $5? Can make more.
I mean, $5 is about twice as much as prize money I've made this year, so I'm going to take this.
So yeah, let's talk about this for a moment, because it's a serious thing, and it brings a lot of discussion about what Contenders really is. You know, how it operates, how teams can expect to work in this environment, because it's not only that these spots are open for grabs right now in a very weird scenario where the team owners can sell the spot, basically. And the spot, again, it's like, it's not a well-sought spot, right? Because the Overwatch League isn't tied in any way to the Contenders seasons. Like, it's not like the top team will be drafted directly into the Overwatch League. It will be, you play, you display your talent, how good of a player you are, and then if the organizer of if the manager of the Overwatch League team wants you in the roster, he will get you. But it's not like there's a direct it's not like there's a direct relation between the two. So the spot isn't really worth as much as one would expect for all teams. Like, yes, you get the exposure, you get the playtime, but again, since you have already 2 teams in the North American side of things where they're already in the Overwatch League, like EnVyUs and Immortals, and let's look who else. Like, Rogue will probably also be in. So this, like, it's really weird. I mean, these teams will also have a spot going into the second season, since the Contender season 0 went to the season 1 and the teams kept the spot, unless in the second season the there will be getting qualifier, and all teams will have to qualify through that to get to the second season. But if the process is the same and some teams automatically get promoted to the second season, and the top 4 of them contain EnVyUs and Immortals, these teams will play for the Overwatch League. They won't need to play in the season 2. So are they going again to sell their spots to someone else?
Sell the spot, have a second team in that plays for them.
Challengers?
Have like even have like for instance, if your roster is actually 12 people, and we know that
no, I don't think they will be able to play with their Overwatch League team. Even the 12 people.
Yeah, it would be an issue, I think, and it's sort of unfair because like it's supposed to be the Challenger League in a sense. But I think this should be known by now, right? I think the participating organizations in Contenders should know if they are automatically qualified for season 2. Unless, like, how else would Liquid now sell this spot? Like, what is someone going to pay if they don't know if they automatically qualify for the second season because of them acquiring the spot for season 1? So I think this is knowledge to the teams, just not to us. Ideally, obviously, right? I mean, there is a scenario where nobody knows, not even Blizzard knows, and you're buying the cat in the bag, right? So
okay, so what do you know about Europe? What do you know about the spot for Movistars? The Movistar sport.
Leaks for days. Okay, we're starting to leak. So apparently, obviously, we know that the Movistar Riders have keys to be a thing in Overwatch. So the team pretty much broke apart. Like in Contenders, it is the case that the organization has the spot first, and if the organization doesn't want the spot, then the team captain gets it, right? The team captain for Movistar Riders would be Logix. As it turns out, apparently, Movistar Riders wants to sell the spot. And as rumors go, apparently it's going to be Gamers Origin that is going to acquire the spot and play in Europe Season 1 Contenders, right? So,
okay.
Leaks.
Yeah, so for days. So, if you want, like, let's show the playoff brackets that's available in the Season 0 Champions article in the Overwatch Contenders.
For Europe?
For Europe, yeah, so that everyone can see that when we talk about Movistar Riders, they failed to progress in the playoffs. Like, they lost the very first match. They were eliminated by United 3-0.
To be fair, though...
Which, again, we should put context into it. Like, United was their bane all along from Takeover 2. So it's like they didn't lose to some second par or, some whatever team.
They lost to the eventual winners, right? So
yeah, and one of the teams that they also struggled into it every time. Not due to them being, being a worse team, but because, like, in competition, someone is a bit above you. Like, it happens. And you need time to work your strategies, to find out what is their weakness. And, yeah, so Movistar Riders were into the spot. But they didn't make it far into the finals. But, again, I don't think this thing affected their decision to drop the team altogether. I think it was more like a decision from the organization to. So in European side of things, again, Misfits have already bought into the Overwatch League.
Mm-hmm.
So we will have, like, again, a situation where one team, if they make it, far into the playoffs, maybe even the finals, and there's like this kind of scenario where the top teams in the Season 0, in the first season, get promoted to the second season, with the exception of teams being in the Overwatch League, what happens to the spot? Again, it's like the problems are on both sides of the Atlantic. It's kind of ridiculous. Like, it's not on one side, and especially not on the European side only, which is like, the problematic one, because not so many tournaments were available to foster new talent and all these things. And also you have like E-United. That E-United is like an American organization, right? It's not a European organization. So they could relocate their team to participate in the Overwatch League from an NA spot and not a European spot. So again, you will have like a missing team from the European side of Contenders. So all these things, together with the roster changes like RIP, that now are Team Giganti, and they won just recently a Finnish, I think, Overwatch Championship or something like that.
Yeah.
So
the only relevant part about that tournament was who casted it, but other than that, obviously the competition wasn't as,
Yeah, but for sponsors, it doesn't really matter what results you get. It's like getting results, getting exposure. So I guess like
I'm sure the 13 people that watch this will be a huge asset to the sponsors. Right.
At some point, I think it was like it reached like 2,500 at some point, but I'm not sure.
I mean, that's half as much as Contenders. If you tell that to an investor, we got half as much. We got first.
Yeah, but because
in
like
an
a
event.
Finnish one.
Yeah, but we got first in an event that had as many viewers as a Blizzard-produced esports event. This is how you sell it.
Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, we told about dropping Kodak. What else?
Yeah,
changes.
We talked about Rest and Pajamas now being Giganti, and then
Yep.
And
What
having
about Laser Kittens? What do we have on them?
Well, the Korean hiatus, I guess. Like, okay, so apparently, let me see. They had this roster update that's from the 26th of July, and they basically explained that Munchkin is out, and that it is apparently because he had some injury and he wants to recuperate in Korea and also look for OWL opportunities there. Good luck with that, mate. Like, we didn't even see you much, and you're mostly famous for not making it on Lunatic Hai because of personality issues. So that isn't saying much, though. Like, these days, basically those are sacrifices, right? Lunatic Hai, each and every season, if you think about it, it's just mad. They are forced to make roster changes based on player behavior that inadvertently turn out to be the best thing that could happen. So the coach looks mad smart, right? When in all actual fact, he actually had nothing to do with it. His hand was forced. Obviously, the who are you thing, yeah, I don't think too many Western organizations would bench a player for having a big ego. Otherwise, we have 3 players in the Western scene left. But yeah, it's just insane how the cards fall sometimes. Right?
Claris in the pawn shop, it's the meme where you go with a relic from World War II saying that it was my grandfather's and he protected with his life. And then the pawn master gets back at you saying, dude, it's fake. That's probably the Claris analogy right now. Like,
I mean, I heard good stuff from them. Like, obviously, if you're a prospect for Lunatic Hai, you probably can play some Overwatch, right? So I'm sort of sad that we're not going to see them, but at the same time, if you're a top-level talent, get the hell out of the West. You're going to deteriorate your skills simply by osmosis of bad players around you, right? So,
isn't this also a thing for Immortals? Like, we're going to see right now Rogue, who went over to Korea. They lost, obviously, right? EnVyUs went over to Korea. They lost again, but they faced the original Koreans. In their environments. They faced the true samurais.
Yeah.
When they get back right now, the storylines behind this class is like, are Immortals as a roster with the Koreans additions enough to stop the reign supremacy of EnVyUs and Rogue? Because EnVyUs was reigning supreme before Rogue, then Rogue came because of the move to Las Vegas, when EnVyUs was missing because they were playing in Apex. So we haven't seen them playing against each other so much for being at the top in this region. And now it's Immortals. They have introduced the Korean additions, they have had a good results with them, but now they're going against the real deal. The people who have played against Koreans, especially EnVyUs, they've played them for straight 3 seasons. So, what do you make of that? Like, do you think that these imports will be enough to secure the top position in Contenders Seasons 1?
Well, here's this thing. EnVyUs also has their Korean, and it just turns out to be that Effect is pretty sick, right? Like,
I think EnVyUs needed to do this. Like, they had to fight fire with fire at some point. I think.
Yeah, which is sort of interesting if you think. So the dynamic is obviously it barring any upsets, it will probably turn into a 3-horse race, right? With Rogue, Immortals, and EnVyUs, right? And I think it really depends on the off-season currently, right? And also how the new meta will fit the styles, because we know that Rogue is pretty one-trick pony in their approach to the game, so how will they accustomed to the new meta?
Are they one-trick pony? I mean, in every meta they found how to play it the best, and
sure
they played it against apart only for the except for the tank meta. That's the only meta I think they couldn't really operate well. But in the Beyblade meta, they managed to do it. In the after the Beyblade meta for a short period before the tank evasion, basically no. It was like the tank evasion happened at the same time they went into hiatus after the Epic Season 1. But then again, when the tank meta was off, they came up with a triple DPS composition that was wrecking everyone in the West.
True.
And I think like they will make the necessary changes and they will find a way to be at the top of the meta, as long as it remains DPS oriented, or like not tank heavy.
I mean, it's possible, and this is a show about leaks now, so I guess we can disclose that Rogue is actually making moves, but they're not getting a South Korean player. It has been rumored, that for at least for the first play day of Contenders, Rogue will field Colsty, the former tank of Movistar Riders, right? And I have it on good authority that Colsty is a pretty sick Reinhardt too. So not just a Winston, and he was a pretty good Winston for Movistar, even though I would say that he probably isn't better than Nox. But we know how much Nox hates Reinhardt, right? Like, he has been playing with his team for, what now, half a year? Like, 8 months or something? And I think Winston Slap has like 1.5 hours tracked on him on Reinhardt. And
yeah, I mean, the thing was like...
he hates it with a passion, right?
Yeah.
So
he likes Winston, but I think he's...
I mean, there are a lot of... We don't quite know if he will replace Nox necessarily. We just know that Colsty will be playing. Obviously, there's some questions to be answered, because we know that Wins is playing this Quake qualifier thing, or I guess the qualifier is through.
Yeah, he's going to the Quake one.
The Quake one thing, and maybe he wants to practice with his team. And Nox is going back to Lucio, and then Colsty is going to take the tank position. I think this is actually the more likely scenario of what's going to happen. Colsty, obviously himself a Frenchman, and
that's a necessity for the Rogue squad, I think.
Yeah, and within the French scene, you would have thought, why are they not trying for Superpluk, who's like the former Reinhardt for LG. And he was always a Reinhardt. He was also one of the highest ranked Reinhardts, I think, in season 3. So he was, to me at least, the obvious name.
I think he's in Ice Block right now, isn't he?
Yeah, but even then, like, if you're Rogue, if Rogue is calling, I would think that someone like Superpluk would heed the call, right? But this is not happening, and it's especially interesting because Colsty was mostly playing Winston because they came up in the Winston meta, right?
Yeah, but again, it's like I think Movistar Riders was a better environment for the player to to nourish than the Ice Block or the LG Loyal, was it, or LG Evil? LG Loyal.
Yeah.
So maybe they're looking for this as well. Like, what was his previous team? How competitive was the team? Like, how the mindset and all these things, rather than just adding a hero, like a hero-based player. We need the Reinhardt. You just take a Reinhardt. Maybe they looking other things as well. And this I'm going to discuss in in another episode, because like there have been so many drama around the Luna, the Luna drop from Luxury Gods Blue, and so many things relating to stats. So we're going to unleash this can worm basically after.
Of course, like someone
Contenders.
needs to put a stop to this hyper villain that is Baroy, that is basically pulling strings, conniving in the back, basically getting people fired with his nasty stats.
I mean, it's not even about Baroy, especially. It's about like what stats themselves are. Like, I mean, everyone is hating the knife, and they don't hate the one holding the knife, basically, because that's what stats are. They're the tool, and everyone is hating of the tool, but not the one using it. And
Yeah,
it's like,
Americans, where's your Second Amendment? Like,
by the way, Americans and Europeans will never do them because stats are useless for them. But in the Korean scene, Korean scene, I mean, yeah, I guess that's right.
Pretty useless when quarterfinalists all use Winston's Lab in some capacity, right? So, whatever. What do they know? What the typical Redditor, believes to know. Anyway, off topic. So let's actually take a look at the remaining teams in North America, right? So I would say 3-horse race: EnVyUs, Rogue, Immortals. And does some team have any upset potential? Do you think that, for instance?
Okay. Before you articulate the question, let me remind everyone that the group phase for season 1 will still be online. Okay, it's not going to be Apex style where every match, even the group stage, is offline, right? So this can upset things. Okay, I mean, I don't expect it to be like the last OMM tournament where, or not the OMM tournament. What was it? The other one, the beat. No, not the OMM. The OMM was okay. The beat invitational, where like so many things went wrong in the production side of things. With the mid game poses, the random things and whatever. But we need to understand that ping is still an issue when you're playing in the online environment. And since many players have experienced the LAN client in the Overwatch World Cup matches, you know that they're going to be like tilted a bit when they know that this sort didn't register because of the freaking LAN client not playing in a LAN environment.
It's nuts, isn't it? Like, we've heard multiple reports that playing Tracer on a LAN client is like night and day. That you can just one clip supports, like, basically that's what you expect to do on a LAN client, while you barely need to squeeze in 2 in order to lay flat as Zenyatta, right? So, and then obviously someone like Shadowburn, at the worst of times, depending on which coast he's playing at, is paying at like 250 to 300 ping. That's nuts, right? That's a nuts difference.
I really hope that FaZe moves him over to NA for this qualifier. But again, like, this FaZe clan team has been around since the beginning of time in Overwatch, but the organization hasn't really invested that much. So
True.
I wouldn't be surprised if we heard about yet another spot being up for grabs, basically, and everyone on FaZe, being suspended and being a free agent suddenly. Because again, like, this FaZe clan hasn't done anything. I mean, they haven't shown any intention to participate in the Overwatch League. They haven't announced anything. They don't really promote their Overwatch team as much as they promote their CSGO teams and whatever. So
Yeah.
Maybe they're just keeping the players so as they have like an arm into the scene of Overwatch that they can
Yeah.
use whenever they want. But yeah,
I think that's actually not that bad of a decision right now. If you can, you obviously like the impending costs that you have when you're not in an Overwatch league, when you don't buy into the Overwatch league but have a team. It's like, okay, you need to pay the player salary, possibly the team house. Obviously they don't have it right now, but that could be okay for someone that wants to have Overwatch as a business opportunity and not, just fall into place again and need to relearn the entire sector. It's pretty good to remain connected and also to, sort of build experience within the scene. So if you can afford it, I don't think it's particularly a bad play. And obviously,
I know
FaZe notoriously, like ridiculous social media following. And I think they're making mad bank, right? That organization. So
yeah, they definitely have the money to keep them around. I just don't know how it will play out in the long run because, like I said, we don't know how the Overwatch Contenders works as of yet. Like, there are some things that we know how they will be solved out right now, like the whole Team Liquid thing that they're going to sell the spot. But how does this work when the teams will leave the contender season? How it will move on to the second season? That's a big leap right now. It will be another qualifier. Like I said in the beginning, it will be another qualifier. Will some teams be automatically promoted? And what happens if these teams are going to the Overwatch League and therefore like these spots became vacant? And like, yeah, there's still some issues with this contender season because it's supposed to work as a phase to get known to be picked for the Overwatch League, but right now teams that will be playing in the Overwatch League participate. So it's like they're taking the positions of potentially new talent that can get in the scene. So it's really weird right now, but I hope in the future we will know exactly how it functions.
Speaking of leaks, right? The following one, I'm actually not that certain about if it's actually going to be the case. I've heard some stuff, and it seems increasingly likely to be the case, but I guess NRG has been trying to get the spot from Team Liquid. So, maybe Team Liquid is actually going to get some money out of this, because we know NRG is just notoriously bad with spending money and just throwing it everywhere, right?
Yeah, so, but at least they make the right move to sign and replace basically Simus.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, I don't know if replacing him was the right call. Maybe they could keep him around as an analyst or a co-coach. But either way, they needed a person like Brad from Selfless to come and take the reins over their Overwatch management. Like they need, and since they got him, it's probably the best move they could. Like he has an eye for talent. He knows how to help with the practicing and whatever.
Yeah.
And therefore,
rumor has it they are actually sort of making progress.
I don't know,
in scrims and everything, which is in a strange situation to be in, right? Because officially they've only signed 2 players. It's only IDQD and Hablu right now, right? So
basically, they haven't only signed. That's how many are left in the team house or whatever.
Too true, yeah.
They had signed 2 teams basically. About energy now, like I said in the beginning. Okay, so the spot itself isn't really worth that much, since the players won't be participating necessarily in the Overwatch League, right? They're just there to promote themselves, to open their opportunities to the teams that are going to participate in the Overwatch League. So what happens right now if we see another team that has bought into the Overwatch League being into Contenders? That's the weird thing. Like, this is definitely for promotional reasons, like to get to know the players, to get to show some results, and to help grow the fan base. But from a really not functional, but a strictly competition based approach, it doesn't really make any sense, right? To have the teams that are going to certainly be playing in the Overwatch League, except if they don't practice, like unless they do it for practice. Which, I mean, you can say that it's a valid reason, but again, like why don't you practice by having like exhibition matches or whatever, like the Korea team did in Korea. So this season is going to be kind of weird in that sense, in this ecosystem sense. But in terms of play, it's going to be really stark, and I'm really happy that we're going to see all these big names and all these great players classic against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about it.
And obviously there are pretty good agents out there, right, to sign. So for instance, Carpe is just still ripping up the North American ladder. Like, that's a strange one, right? Did Selfless sort of put him in some shed and have him play Overwatch now?
I think he's still in the team house. Like, Brad was saying that he will keep them in the team house and until the point where they have like been given opportunities from other organizations and they have a way to sustain themselves. So I think he's still in the Selfless team house, and since he was drafted by Energy, maybe, I mean, I tweeted about it, and I think the biggest storyline for this for the Overwatch League in general is like how coaches are going to assemble teams, especially for the teams that that not exist right now. Like Hack, for example, is the Overwatch manager or whatever of the Boston, I think, team.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you know that he was having a roster of their own. He was behind Toronto Esports, and he was like, trying to get into the Overwatch scene. So, I could be very surprised if he doesn't have like good synergy with some players to bring them over.
He actually also helped build the first Immortals roster that stuck together for like 8 months and won 2 LAN events, I think. Yeah,
that's even better because again, it's like the coach comes with some baggage. He doesn't come alone. He doesn't falls from the heaven just going to pick some random. So this is the biggest for me. This is the biggest thing to follow, like how coaches are going to bring players into the scene that they know they have worked with, and therefore they can just build a roster far more easily. And which pieces are they going to complement this core they have? Like I can't see Brad, for example, just discarding everyone from Selfless and just going and picking other players when you have Sinatra, for example, which is a very good player and a well-rounded one. I mean, he has Zarya, he has Tracer, and I don't know how many other heroes in his arsenal from his ladder play. So I would find it like really surprising if he didn't bring some players with him from this core. And then you mentioned Carpe. Maybe he brings Carpe as well.
Carpe. Sinatra is still a free agent, right?
Yep.
Logix is a free agent. And obviously we've like people that also have access to leaks have hinted to me on Twitter that he's apparently much sought after and that people actually really, hold him highly. Much more, actually, than I would say the community does. Because I don't see the community having a particular, outstanding opinion of him. Or, if we're talking about the best Western player, I don't think Reddit would produce that name in the top 5 of comments, right? So,
do you want me to trigger you? Do you want me?
I mean,
Rascal is overrated. Lul.
Dude, that
thread was golden. That thread was literally
that was a great thread, and then obviously there was another thread that was ranking overall team power level, and the guy that created the thread had Uncia over EnVyUs. Uncia, the fucking trash can of the South Korean scene. Like, literally every player you don't want to have on any team is now being offloaded to Uncia. That is a better team than EnVyUs? Get out, mate. Like, what are you talking about?
He also had a dead team in that list, so...
Yeah, Mighty ID is like 7th, right? Like, Carpe has been here for like... but yeah, obviously Karif, and it's like... Dude, they've already played tournaments with him. Like, that group stage is like... When did the group stage start? Like, early... Was it late late May? when Apex started, or
What do you mean Apex started? No, Apex started in April, I think, or
April?
In the end of April. I think it was
Yeah.
like
So
the 24th.
yeah. So like
Something
he
like
hasn't
that.
been.
On the 8th. On the 8th, it was the finals for the second season, and I think like 2 weeks later,
Okay.
it's the third season started. So
So for two months, Mighty AOD has not been a team. So what is? Okay, I'm not going to.
it makes you also wonder which like members are in those teams that he has in mind as the top ones. Like maybe he has in mind an EnVyUs roster with Hulk in it, for example, like or even with Tailspin. Like I mean, you don't know.
I mean, we're not giving him the necessary benefit of the doubt. He could be a time traveler,
I
or
don't
could have been
give
in a coma for 2 months, right? We don't know.
I wouldn't give him even a health assurance benefit personally. Like when you make this,
just he had a car accident and then he's in the hospital and his mom wakes him up and, sweetie, you have been in a coma for 2 months now. Like, can you remember anything? Mom, you need to drive me home. I have this copy paste like in a notepad and I really need to post it on our competitive Overwatch. Everything is on the line. Like, what are these people thinking, mate? it's unreal. Okay. Getting triggered with Yiska. Now, but do we have any other storylines going on in North America or indeed in Europe? Like, who's going to take it? What do you think is likely?
Okay. Let's talk a bit about the European side of things. I mean, for the North American one, I would go for EnVyUs, like taking it, and like top 3 again, like EnVyUs, Immortals, unless something like I don't know, like unless something happens, like somehow a team like Ungarna figures out some composition that beats everyone else to the ground.
So obviously, yeah.
It's possible, but again, I know that EnVyUs has the players who can adapt on the fly sometimes to these compositions, and they also can reach a higher level of play after they see a composition they've been defeated by much faster than other teams. Rogue, they need to practice things. They need to have like this kind of setup beforehand, and therefore I think they can be there on top. But because it's the beginning of the meta, it's still the early stages. They will probably have a harder time to defeat teams that could easily defeat in the previous meta. In the European side of things, that's where things get really tricky, right? So eUnited is in a good spot. Okay, I think eUnited is in a good spot. Cruz, I think Cruz will love Doomfist, or he can play Doomfist, I think, like because he played also a lot of Genji. But again, let's keep in mind that Doomfist isn't really the answer to everything. Like he has weaknesses as a hero. He needs his team to play with him, and otherwise he can be rendered useless quite easily. So I think eUnited has the roster to adapt to this meta. Laser Kittens, it's still kind of a question mark how far and how good they are. For me, the big upset will be probably 1, 2, 3. I don't know how well they can adapt to this meta and how fast, because I know that in the previous meta they grinded, the meta and strategies and all these things for months before they made this big the word is evading me. Anyways, when they entered the scene and create the upsets. And Misfits, Misfits have Tvik, so he's probably going to be the one playing Doomfist, adding the 25th hero in his 24-man roster.
Yeah.
So Reinforce is going to be playing his Reinhardt again, which is like a good thing for the roster overall, since he's more, familiar with the hero and playing better on him. So the missing components for Misfits are how well their support can adjust to the meta and how maybe the backline can suffer in this one. I don't know.
I would agree, and I think that we have to see. I think Misfits in itself is an intrinsically motivated team, but at the same time, I would think that there's extra motivation to do well, especially if the roster lock, you know, because we know the tournament ends before the roster lock happens, and this team has an OWL spot, and they want to play in the OWL and not be replaced by some Korean team that the Misfits organization just buys out because their team is not competitive, right? So I think...
And you know that Misfits have a LOL team that also has Koreans, so it's not like that big league for the organization to get the Koreans, because Rogue, on the other hand, as an organization, don't have, you know, that many rosters, and none of them, I think, features Koreans. So for them, it would be a much bigger leap to sign a full Korean roster and get rid of all the all the French players. I think I would give it to E United with a potential upset by Misfits. Basically, I think Misfits would be in the top 2.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, if Movistar Riders was needed, I would have like Misfits, Movistar Riders, and E United. That's the top 3 right now. Later, Kittens can upset in the top 4, maybe get top 3, maybe top 2, if somehow like they have elevated their play, which again is kind of weird right now because half of the team goes in World Cup teams, and we don't know how much practice they have.
Yeah.
Under their belt. I don't see Gigante upsetting anything. Sorry, Finnish guys. I don't think.
I mean, they will upset themselves. I can say that. Now we have to see what Devon can do. I think that's a.
I think they need more time. Like I think they need more time. They have the pieces
or more time. Moo.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Although I think like I need to see how Fraggy is going to play with Reinhardt in this meta. If Reinhardt is the hero to play, Zap is playing this area, so therefore like Lynx and Devin. Anyways, the other guy plays the DPS role. So willing to see Fraggy is as feared as he was, you know, in the past. In the past with, you know, the triple tank meta and whatever. If he's not that great, I can't see this roster working, because you need the tank players. You need the players that can create the space for their DPS and everyone else to do plays. Otherwise, I don't see it working. And Singularity Needs, I think they will have a good run. I think this team has potential. Don't know how far they go. And for the newcomers I think they will get their rare time. They will get their practice. Fight all these teams, all the top teams in Europe, and see how they fare with each other. And therefore, it's going to be interesting to see them as well. Maybe they can get a good 1 or 2 curveballs in there. Maybe some like one more thing that I don't know, because I haven't seen an announcement. I don't know if it's Lunar Colony is in the map pool. That could be an upset as well.
I'm pretty sure it will be. I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, it's in the World Cup. Why wouldn't it be in Contenders, right?
I don't know. Like, people were criticizing it.
True. Yeah. Even though it feels like a more fun 2CP map in a sense that
no one has figured out yet, and you don't get to see strats failing over again.
Yeah, that's true. And also, like, point A is notoriously hard to hold, so I think it's not as frustrating in that sense. Obviously, then you get more often to point B, and then the stagger happens more frequently, so, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see.
The other thing is, like, do you think in Apex Season 4 it's going to be in their map pool? Or in the
good question. I don't know.
I think it will be. Like, I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah.
So if it's the same model as the same format as before, where every map is the map pool picked, expect those curveballs. Expect those curveballs. It's like, it's the same reason why teams in Overwatch World Cup choose it. It's because they subtract this element of preparedness, of preparation, and higher play that the teams that have practiced this map a lot have on that map, and you know you can upset someone in the on the horizon map. So that's another interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
And I don't have anything more to say for in the pawn shop for today. Like,
I mean, I guess one thing we could point out, like if you still hunger for more, you know, storylines, Volamel had a pretty good piece on North America. You can go read that. If I remember it, I will post it in the comments. Otherwise, you can obviously always find that on Esports 7. I think it was a pretty good piece, and like reading those actually increases my or enhances my enjoyment of the competition, simply because I get to shit on Volamel if they don't become true. Right? That's how I work.
definitely. Like,
And to
you need to set on the riders.
yeah.
And then they stop writing, and then the competitive Overwatch subreddit asks, why is there no content anymore?
Yeah. Miraculous. Obviously shit on them every opportunity you get, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so one last leak before we
Oh my god.
So as it happens, you know I think his title is general manager or something of Team Liquid. He goes by his nickname is Liquid112. Steve. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Arhanset or something. He is the co-CEO and owner of Team Liquid, right? And it just so happens that I saw him in the act of trying to sell the contender spot. And I, like, in the age of, you know, cell phones, I just took out my cell phone and I've you know, first hand footage of this happening. You want to see it? Okay, so let me set this up. The leaks man today. Okay. So let's see.
Hey, bud.
You referring to me?
Right. I got something you need.
You do?
Yep. And I can sell it to you real cheap.
Well, what do I need that you can sell me cheap?
This.
World class leaks.
Oh my
I guess
God.
this is the high point of the show, and you know what they say: you gotta stop when you're on top. Episode
Yep.
13 of Overrated. We'll see you guys next time.
The lucky number. See ya.